Hey everybody, James Shepard here with another edition of the Merchant Sales Insight. Today I'm talking to you about how to close monster merchant accounts and specifically how to deal with those situations where you have to do competitive pricing, but you still want to generate a margin. I'm really excited about this one. Actually, I did a lot of research for this. Actually downloaded a list of big merchants in my area and made some calls and things. And so really just fun to kind of get back into it. So I'm going to give you kind of a roadmap of how to close these big deals. We're going to talk about how to get in contact with these large decision makers, what you need to know about the industry in terms of integration and things like that. And then also we're going to talk about how to offer competitive pricing and get these deals across the finish line. So before we jump into that, our sponsor for this edition is Dustin Magaziner over at PayBright. So it's gopaybright.com. Dustin's a good friend of mine. I really admire what he's doing over there. And so we started working together, I guess it was about 6 months or so ago. And we started working together to create this series called No Merchant Left Behind. And we're talking about some of these key merchant types where agents end up, losing the deal, or they don't even go after the deal because they don't think they can get it. And it just doesn't make any sense. They should be able to get these deals. So it could be deals where, like in the last one we talked about, where they need a lot of free equipment. And the ISO, the processor, doesn't want to pay for this free equipment, even when it's totally justified. We talked before that about micro merchant accounts. And so today we're talking about these large volume merchants. So let's dive in and talk about this. So there's really kind of 3 steps to this. The first one is, how do you get in contact with these decision makers at these larger companies? And so let's start by defining these large companies. So I'm going to just go back here and look over at my other screens. I want to run through some of these numbers with you real quick. So what I did here is I went to dataaxleusa.com, which, by the way, if you've never used that website, you really should. It's actually pretty cool. It's a free way to kind of do some market research, and it's a very cheap way to get data. So as an example here, I went over to dataaxleusa.com, and I searched for businesses within 15 miles of my home address who have annual revenue of 10 million to 100 million, who are not publicly owned, and who are not franchise businesses. Okay. So that's kind of the criteria or the context I'm using for this. So what we're looking for here is not really the big kind of multi-location restaurant retail store. That's not necessarily, I mean, a lot of these tips will apply to that. But what I'm mainly talking about is kind of that local. So maybe it is a small chain of restaurants locally, but more likely than not, it's going to be larger businesses that are local. So I'll give you a couple of examples in my community. So when there was 146 businesses that fit that criteria in my area. And again, I'm in like the most rural area ever. So the fact that there's 146 businesses in my area with 10 to 100 million in revenue means there's probably 500 in your area, So by the way, that list of 146 businesses, I got the highest package with like the most data. Cost me $157. That's it. $157, like a little more than $1 per record. If you don't already have that list for your market, you're like crazy. I mean, just go to dataaxleusa.com, which, by the way, they did not pay for a sponsorship or anything. I just really like using them. Go in there and run this query yourself and see, like, within 30 miles, and buy that list. It might cost you $500-600 for you if it's a larger list, but buy that list and start looking through it, because you're going to be surprised. There's going to be a lot of companies you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that company, but they're a local company and they're really large, So local amusement, water parks, auto dealers, truck dealers, motorsports dealers, that sort of thing. Large liquor store, large grocery store, large landscape supply center, building material store, dairy supplier, wholesalers, factories, department stores, large local one department store, and then swimming pool supply stores. So there's a couple of examples of the type of businesses I'm talking about. Now, again, this was a little bit of a longer one. So if you actually want to listen to the whole thing or read it, just go over to ccsalespro.com/insights, and you can download the full PDF or listen to the audio version, which is more the audiobook style. But I want to dive in real quick and talk about these 3 things. So in order to get in contact, let's break that down. So number 1, establish yourself as an expert. Okay. That means you need to be an expert. You need to actually understand what you're talking about. If you're going to get out there and sell payment processing to large merchants where they're probably not going to want to do dual pricing or surcharging, they're probably going to want to do interchange plus. If they're doing, $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million a month in payment processing volume, you're going to go in there and sell them. You better know what you're talking about. I shared a story in the insight that I thought was kind of funny. So for those of you that understand FANF, FANF, I won't get into all of it, but it's a fee that Visa charges per location. And, it's a big graph, and depending on the processing volume of the merchant, it goes up significantly. Well, for most merchants that are a little smaller in size, it's only $2 a month. So we had an agent submit a statement to us recently to get isoamp.com, our statement analysis company, the one that I own. And they sent this statement in, and it had $1,000 Fanfa fee. Well, it was totally legitimate fee. It's because the merchant did a ton of volume. Well, the agent did not realize that, and they reached back out to us and said, "Hey, you guys messed up." We're like, "What do you mean?" "Well, you didn't notice this markup. They have $998 of markup because they're charging $1,000 for Fanfa if it's only supposed to be $2." Well, we of course corrected the user and helped them understand that actually it is supposed to be $1,000. But can you imagine if that agent had gone back to that merchant, that big account, and said, "Look at this, your current company is ripping you off. They're marking you up almost $1,000 on this one fee." Then they would have sent their first statement out after closing the account. And guess what that statement would have had on it? $1,000 Fanfa, because that's the Fanfa cost, right? So it's things like that. You need to know what you're talking about. Dive into more of my video training, like look at other resources in the industry, magazines, things like that. You need to understand the industry and establish yourself as an expert. Number two, join some local clubs. I'm a member of different clubs in my local community. So this could be your Rotary Club, Chamber of Commerce, entrepreneurial centers, things like that. BNI group. So join local clubs and memberships of clubs with business interests. PayBright actually is one of the things they do really well. They actually realize how important this is, and they even help their agents cover the cost of membership in these different organizations and things like that. So you can reach out to them about that program. Become a member in the club and actually get involved. Do something in the club. Stand out a little bit in the club. Number three, leverage LinkedIn in order to find someone at one of these companies that's also a member of one of these clubs. That's very easy, really. Now, this is one of those cases where you don't necessarily have to talk to the decision maker first. What I try to do is find the highest ranking person I can in the organization where I feel like I can reach out. And then what I do is I reach out as another local business owner, hopefully as a fellow member of some club. And I say, "Hey, I noticed we're both members of the Rotary Club or the Chamber of Commerce. And I would just like to sit down and buy you lunch. We're both local business people. Maybe we should be doing some business together." What I have found is that the conversion rate, the rate at which I'm able to get a conversation with somebody is extremely high, north of 60, 70% usually for me, because people are like, "Oh, you're a local business person. I'm a local business person." This happened to me just recently. I had a couple of different agents that reached out to me that were either passing through my area or were in my area selling. And they found my content and they reached out and said, "Hey, I see you're in Hollidaysburg. I'm in, this city. Could we grab lunch?" Both times I said, "Sure, why not?" Right. Even though, if some random agent reached out to me and asked me for an hour-long meeting for free, I would say no, right? Like, I don't do that. I do consulting for big companies and I do the video content for agents, and I'll take a quick 5-minute call. But when you're local, people want to connect with other local business people. And so you have an edge there. And I've done this many times with other local businesses where I've just asked people to lunch as a fellow local business person, and they have agreed. So use LinkedIn to find that, and then set that up. So now you made contact. Now what's next? Understand payment technology integration. Okay. So make sure you're talking throughout the process about how are they processing payments? What technology solution are they using? Do you have a gateway that can integrate, right? Work with your payment processor and set realistic expectations. Okay. Not going to dive into much more detail there. You could read the ebook on it, but it's that's very important. Then finally, number three is offer competitive pricing. Now, this is interesting because these larger merchants generally have really, really low pricing. One thing I found, in my own career selling payment processing, I would start to go after these larger accounts. And at the time, the payment processor I was working with, they had a schedule a cost of like 5 cents and 5 basis points or something, which is not like horrible. I mean, when you're selling dual pricing, for instance, but when you're trying to sell somebody and they're already at 5 basis points and 3 cents over interchange, right? How do you sell them? But the thing is, you can get lower schedule a cost. So as an example, our sponsor, one of the reasons I asked Dustin to sponsor this topic is that PayBright has a schedule a cost for these larger merchant accounts of 1 basis point and 1 penny. So what that allows you to do is go to that merchant that's paying, 5 basis points and 3 cents and say, "I can get you down to 2 and 2. Now you're making 1 basis point and 1 penny on the account on every transaction. And, if they're doing $7 million a month in volume, you're still going to make some residual on that. That's not horrible. You know what I mean? So that's the idea but you have to have a low enough schedule A cost to be able to negotiate. Also, make sure you have that schedule A cost locked in. So one of the things I was talking to Dustin about is that a lot of these processors will say, bring us a big account and we'll do it on a case by case basis and we'll see what we can do. Well, that never works out very well. Usually the agent doesn't get the deal because they're not confident in their negotiation because they don't really know what they can do. Or they get the deal and then find out that actually they got the deal right at the cost, and the processor says, well, we'll board it, but you're only going to get $20 a month in profit. And here they landed this $5 million a month account. And it's like, well, that was a really, really bad idea, So, you got to negotiate pricing. Again, I'm not in any way recommending you sell everybody at 2 basis points and 2 cents. That's a very extreme example. But what I have seen a lot lately is I've seen a lot of these larger accounts that are at, 10 basis points and 5 cents is kind of what I would say industry average that I've seen for these larger accounts. And, you got to take note. I saw one just yesterday. They do 3 million a month and they were at 5 basis points and 0 cents over interchange. So you got to be an expert. You got to know how to negotiate these deals, but you also have to be partnered with somebody that's able to get the deal done. So if you haven't done so already, check out PayBright. It's gopaybright.com. So GOPAYBRIGHT, gopaybright.com. Check them out. They have a really, really good free equipment program. They have a really good micro merchant program. They have a really good large merchant program with the low schedule A cost that we've been talking about. And so their mantra is very different than a lot of the other ISOs. They're not looking for exclusivity. They just want you to send the hard to place deals to them. They're kind of the place you go when, hey, I don't have another deal. I can't put this deal somewhere. They can get that deal placed for you. They do a lot of hard to place deals. So if you're trying to figure out where to place a deal, talk to PayBright. And I think you're going to find a home for that account, and you might even find a home for yourself as an agent. So my name is James Shepard. Thanks for watching this edition of the Merchant Sales Insight. Make sure you head over to ccsalespro.com/insight in order to check that out.